يا سيد أنا رجعت على لبنان، أتمنى أنك ترجع كمان على لبنان.
قرار صادر من مجلس الجامعة تسمية حزب الله الإرهابي.
Good afternoon, you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. General Fathi Zaidan, a prominent Palestinian official, is assassinated as a bomb rips through his car near the Palestinian refugee camp of Ain al-Halwi. The Lebanese cabinet agrees to approve long-awaited funds to upgrade security at Beirut's international airports. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan hosts Saudi King Salman at his presidential palace in Ankara, extending his guests a lavish welcome ahead of the OIC summit in Istanbul. General Fathi Zaidan, a prominent Palestinian official, was assassinated when a bomb ripped through his car near the southern Palestinian refugee camp of Ain al-Halwi. A Syrian passerby was also killed in the explosion. The explosive device was reportedly placed under Zaidan's vehicle. The bombing went off as the Fatah movement senior officer was leaving a security meeting between Palestinian factions in the YEMEN refugee camp. Military and security forces deployed heavily in the area to prevent any escalation of the situation. Veteran Fatah official Major General Munir Makdah told LBCI that Zaidan demanded during the meeting that security measures be tightened in the YEMEN camp. Interior Minister Nuhad al-Mashnou left the cabinet meeting early to follow up on the bombing. Well, speaking of which, the Lebanese cabinet has agreed to approve long-awaited funds to upgrade security at Beirut's international airport. The national news agency said the government will commence tenders for the airport and will wrap up the bidding process within 15 days. Health Minister Wael Abu Faoud had urged fellow ministers to seriously discuss any threats to the facility. Administrative Development Affairs State Minister Nabil Defrej voiced similar concerns, as Transportation Minister Ghazi Zaited expressed optimism on the imminent release of funds to boost airport security measures. But tension remained between political rivals over the long-simmering disagreement over the state security agency's leadership. Social Affairs Minister Rashid Derbaz said at the end of the meeting that discussions on the issue will continue in the next cabinet session. Information Minister Ramzi Jrej downplayed the rift over the state security file, remaining optimistic over the course of the cabinet session. The state-owned Ogero telecommunications company has determined the location of a submarine communications cable that is transferring illegal internet into Lebanon. TV footage showed Ogero employees accompanied by security forces at Nahr al-Kalb, north of Beirut, to inspect the cable. Experts say the cable is active and carrying telecoms data. Telecommunications Minister Boutros Harib hailed the investigation into Lebanon's illegal internet scandal, vowing to pursue the case until the end. He praised the diligence of investigators who are uncovering new information about the network, its members, and those responsible for it. Meanwhile, State Prosecutor Samir Hamoud said military prosecutor Judge Sa'ir was tasked with summoning those behind the scandal for questioning. Mount Lebanon's general prosecutor has charged an Australian mother and 6 others with abducting 2 children from their Lebanese father. The abduction is linked to a child custody case between the father, Ali Al-Amin, and Australian mother, Sally Faulkner, from Brisbane. A judicial source said the defendants were referred by Judge Claude Karam to Mount Lebanon's investigative judge Rami Abdallah for further questioning in presence of their lawyers and translators. Abdallah has issued arrest warrants against the 7 suspects on charges of kidnapping at gunpoint, threatening the lives of the children and harming them. They could be sentenced up to 20 years in prison. A new artificial intelligence tool is offering refugees in Lebanon an opportunity to discuss their fears and frustrations. The program, called Karim, is accessible via popular instant messaging applications on people's phones. More than 1 million Syrian refugees have entered Lebanon since the start of the conflict 5 years ago, many having survived traumatic experiences back home. More details in this report. We apologize for these technical difficulties. Two Russian military pilots were killed when their helicopter crashed near the Syrian city of Homs. The Russian Defense Ministry, however, said the aircraft had not been under fire, and experts were looking into the reasons of the accident. The bodies have been recovered and brought to Russia's Hmeimim air base. The helicopter crash took place less than a month after President Vladimir Putin surprised the West by ordering the bulk of Russian forces to pull out of Syria after a 5.5-month bombing campaign there. UN Syria envoy Staffan de Mistura has arrived in Tehran for talks with Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian, a key backer of President Bashar al-Assad. On the eve of fresh peace negotiations in Geneva, Iran and Russia have been Assad's top supporters in the conflict, with Tehran providing economic and military support that has backed up his rule. The UN Security Council passed a resolution in December that led to the peace talks. A framework called for Syrian elections to be held 18 months after a transitional government is agreed, however. The fate of Assad is a major stumbling block. While the Syrian opposition insists Assad can play no role in a transitional government, the Damascus government, as well as Iran, says voters should decide his fate. While in Damascus yesterday, de Mistura said this week's Geneva meetings will be crucially important. Brazil's Congressional Committee votes in favor of impeaching President Dilma Rousseff. That's coming up next. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the news in English. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has hosted Saudi King Salman at his presidential palace in Ankara, extending his guests a lavish welcome, underlining the growing importance of Ankara-Riyadh ties. King Salman was welcomed with an honor guard of Turkish soldiers, as well as 16 costume warriors representing the various Turkish empires in world history. The king and his delegation are set to hold several hours of talks with a Turkish leader before heading to Istanbul for the summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, known as OIC. After a period of tension, Saudi Arabia under King Salman has emerged as one of Erdogan's key allies, with the two countries in particular sharing a common vision on the Syrian conflict. In fact, both countries believe the ousting of President Bashar al-Assad is the key to solving the Syrian conflict and backed rebel groups fighting his regime. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says there is an urgent need for a UN resolution on Israeli settlements. He criticized what he said was insufficient action from U.S. President Barack Obama's administration, while also firmly backing a French initiative to hold an international peace conference this summer. Abbas spoke ahead of a tour that will take him to Turkey, France, Russia, Germany, and New York, where the Palestinians are discussing a UN draft resolution condemning Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. The trip comes with the clock ticking for both the 81-year-old and the Obama administration, with speculation the U.S. president could change tack and support a resolution on the peace process before he leaves office in January. At least 4 people were killed when a suicide bomber detonated an explosive belt near a football stadium in the southern Yemeni city of Aden. 8 people were wounded in the attack, which appeared to target young men queuing to sign up for the military. The attack comes during a ceasefire and a day before peace talks aimed at ending more than a year of war in a country that has become a subject of dispute for regional power Saudi Arabia and Iran. UN spokesman Stéphanie Dujarric said the truce appeared to be holding despite pockets of violence. Moving on to Europe, Belgium has charged 2 more suspects in connection with last month's Brussels airport and metro attacks. The federal prosecutor's office says Ismail and Ibrahim F. were charged with participation in the activities of a terrorist group, terrorist murders, and attempts to commit terrorist acts. The prosecutor said there were indications the 2 men could be linked to an address in the Avenue des Casernes in the Etterbeek district of Brussels, which was raided last week. At the time, police said they found nothing in the address, but reports later suggested that 2 men, one of whom later blew himself up in the Maalbeek metro station, may have stayed there or used it at some point. The second man, later identified by authorities as Osama K., was apparently also carrying a bomb, but for reason unknown, did not go through with the attack. More than 400 protesters have been arrested for unlawfully demonstrating at the U.S. Capitol. Democracy Spring, the group that organized the protests, said the demonstration was held to demand Congress take immediate action to end the corruption of big money in U.S. politics and ensure free and fair elections. The group reportedly arrived in Washington, D.C. after a 9-day march from Philadelphia. And further south, a committee of Brazil's lower house of Congress has recommended the impeachment of President Dilma Rousseff, who faces charges of breaking budget laws to support her re-election in 2014. The committee voted 38-27 in favor of the move, with a vote in the full lower house expected to take place on Sunday. If 2/3 vote in favor, the impeachment will be sent to the Senate. If the upper house decides by a simple majority to put Rousseff on trial, she will immediately be suspended for up to 6 months while the Senate decides her fate. Vice President Michel Temer will then take office as acting president. And moving on to India, around 100 workers are feared trapped inside a garment factory near Mumbai as a fire broke out on the ground floor early this morning. 9 fire trucks and 6 water tankers were rushed to the site to douse the flames. Some workers took refuge on the roof of the building, and rescuers were seen throwing water bottles to those trapped inside. No casualties have been reported so far, and the cause of the fire remains unknown. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. General Fathi Sidon, a prominent Palestinian official, is assassinated as a bomb rips through his car near the Palestinian refugee camp of Ain al-Helwe. The Lebanese cabinet agrees to approve long-awaited funds to upgrade security at Beirut's international airports. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan hosts Saudi King Salman at his presidential palace in Ankara, extending his guests a lavish welcome ahead of the OIC summit in Istanbul. Those are your headlines for this Tuesday. I'm Linda Tamim, and I thank you all for watching.
بقول له يا سيد أنا رجعت على لبنان، أتمنى إنك ترجع كمان على لبنان.
قرار صادر من مجلس الجامعة تسمية حزب الله الإرهابي.